Welcome to the IR Global podcast. IR Global is the largest international professional services network. I'm the host of the IR Digital podcast, Jennifer Riggins. Today we are speaking with Donnie Emmi of Hunsaker Emmi, a well-known lawyer and business strategist in the international cannabis trade and business. Yes, folks, today we are talking marijuana and its pals, CBD and hemp. And, the business and legal side of this controversial and kind of really exciting and fast-growing industry. So let's start by answering who would benefit from listening to our conversation. Donnie, who do you think should be listening to our conversation? Who should benefit from learning about the, weed industry?
Well, so that's a pretty dynamic group of people. There are people that are interested in this industry just for simple curiosity's sake, for purposes of just knowing what's going on in the world. This is having a major impact. Cannabis industry as a whole, being hemp, CBD, other derivatives of it, and the marijuana side is impacting the entire world right now. But beyond just general curiosity, this is probably geared more towards people that are already in the industry or already poking around in the industry, looking to invest in the industry, lawyers, investors, capital firms, etc. But I guess more towards the people that are already know the basics and want to know more or want to learn about how to get involved in the industry a little bit more from a investment standpoint or operation standpoint.
Cool. And now I have to ask, because you're kind of, a successful suit type business, how did you end up in this, stereotypically hacky sack and dreadlocks industry? How did you end up investing in, I assume, and getting involved in representing lawyers and businesses in this?
Well, I started out my practice and my career, I guess, in the investment world, working on Wall Street, New York. Saw that this was a budding industry, and it was right around, I guess,
budding.
Budding, yes, that was an unintentional pun, but it worked well.
Couldn't let it go.
It's probably around 2007 or so when I noticed that there was an opportunity in Colorado. Moved back to Colorado from New York City. Started representing small transactions, small businesses, general corporate organizational formation. And it was just such a nascent industry at the time that most transactions were done on handwritten in paper or a handshake deal or maybe a couple of emails and text messages. But there was an opportunity at that point to start to legitimize the business a little bit. And so slowly but surely I started to build a practice around initially the marijuana industry. And that evolved into the hemp and cannabis, the other side of the cannabis industry, the hemp and the CBD market now, and the evolving versions of the derivatives of the plant.
Wow. So for the U.S., in this budding market, yes, listeners, there will be puns if I can help it in this one. You're basically an old hat, because 13 years is a long time to be in this industry. So what areas do you work in the cannabis business, and what areas do you not cover? Since it does seem very broad, a huge business.
Well, that's a huge spectrum. I would say that have covered every single portion of the industry at periods of time over the years. As my practice has evolved, I would say the largest portion of my practice right now deals with representing banking and financial institutions, venture capital firms, and a handful of select publicly traded companies. And then occasionally, as the case may be, large-scale mergers and acquisitions, and large-scale investments, capital infusions into existing operations.
And when you say publicly traded companies, large-scale mergers and acquisitions, we're talking cannabis in the US, where it's technically federally illegal, but is obviously legal in most states, I think now, in the majority at least. We're talking it's a multi-million-dollar industry, I guess, if these are publicly traded companies?
Yes. When I'm talking about large scale, I'm at this point, we're not talking about the $500,000, $1 million transactions anymore. We're doing transactions in the tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, and we've even seen one recently that had nothing to do with, but it was a $1 billion transaction in stock and currency cross borders between Canada and the United States. Is a large transaction. So we're seeing a great deal of legitimacy and a great deal of really sophisticated, intelligent financial resources coming to this space, and it's just an super exciting time. This is generational and maybe even beyond multi-generational opportunities for people that are willing to get involved now.
And certainly anything we can do that can shut down black markets, can legitimize things, is better for everyone involved and better for the world, actually. So before we go any further, I want to get down to semantics, because maybe people are well-versed in cannabis language, I'm not sure. But as we go into it, what is the difference between cannabis and marijuana and CBD and hemp oil, other hemp products? What do people need to know, especially from a business standpoint? Because I assume they have different categorization, from taxation to legalization to anything, right?
Well, so the general overarching word for all of it is a cannabis plant. I mean, it's various versions of it, and certain plants have higher concentrations of chemicals within it. And I'm not gonna even pretend to play the scientific game here. I can tell you the legal difference between the two of them. The scientific difference is for somebody way smarter than I am in that. So generally speaking, the larger transactions, the transactions that are occurring and that we're a part of internationally are mostly hemp related, whether it's the industrial fiber portion of the hemp or the CBD or other CBG, CBN, other derivatives of the plant. All of which still remains, whether it's THC or any other version of it, still remains on the Schedule 1 substance. CBD does as well in the United States, which makes it illegal. But notwithstanding, the Farm Bill that passed last year has given general broad permission to the hemp industry to produce CBD or CBD derivatives and transport it across state lines with guidance. But it's still a very gray area in the United States as well as the rest of the world right now. But generally speaking, as we are crossing international borders, it's going to be in the hemp or CBD market at this point. And the marijuana industry is maturing, and Colorado has recently passed laws to allow international investments into Colorado state businesses under certain circumstances. But it's just an incredibly evolving industry, and one that's you wake up on a Monday morning, and by Friday morning, the industry has changed dramatically, and it's unlike anything else that I've ever been part of.
That's great. And a bonus is that people would be potentially investing in something that my understanding is much more sustainable than other materials for manufacturing or paper, things like that. So it would have an environmental impact as well. For, say, a venture capitalist who's looking to invest in both this very ancient and also, as you said, like rapidly emerging market, who should look to invest in these products? How do they know which ones to invest in? What are the risks of this investment?
Well, that's a really broad answer. What should you be looking for? I mean, when a venture capital firm is going to enter into this space, they have a general idea of what they want to look for from a financial performance of a company, and that's really it. It's the management team, the resources of the team, the capital position of the company, and its business plan, its objectives, its opportunities. A venture capital firm will be in a good position to already assess that. It's business as normal. But the one thing that changes dramatically between business as normal for a VC firm is you're dealing in a relatively beginning regulated market with significant legal challenges on whether it's legal or not. And what I've learned in dealing with certain publicly traded companies is while a lot of these businesses have the bandwidth and the financial resources to scale, the management team to scale, the ideas to scale, they lack one critical component, and that's the legal and, in many cases, financial advice that's necessary, specific just for this industry. And when I say this industry, I'm referring to the broad marijuana to CBD industry.
How do you actually navigate the dichotomy in the U.S. that marijuana is technically federally illegal, while I think it's 30 states who have legalized it somehow? Could a large corporation or investment firm invest in this industry, be putting themselves at risk by investing in either importing or exporting cannabis products to or from the U.S., or by supporting the large-scale farming of it? Could you actually get in trouble or go to jail as a large corporation or a venture capitalist firm investing in this?
That's a difficult question to answer directly with a yes or a no. Can you get in trouble? Yes. Can you go to jail? Yes. Can you navigate this safely and avoid those two circumstances? Yes. Where people seem to get in trouble in this industry on the import-export of cannabis-related products is when they're tending to import CBD. It turns out that it's above the legal limit of THC content, and it generally gets confiscated and destroyed unless there's a greater intent to import marijuana. But can a company get in trouble? Sure, it can. It's got to make sure that it's minding its P's and Q's and making sure that it operates its corporate governance within the very tight boundaries of the law, but certainly can be done, and it is being done to the tune of billions and billions of dollars. But a direct answer on can you get in trouble is, I guess, yes. But we've been navigating safely in this space for more than a decade, including dealing with banking and financial industries, which is as regulated as it gets, and currently work with a credit union that banks more than $300 million of marijuana money a month. And I've been working with that credit union for the last 5 years, particularly to this industry. So can we get in trouble for that? Sure. I imagine that there's a number of federal laws that contradict what we're doing, but when you do it safely and when you do it appropriately and make sure the government is with you on each step of the way, it can be done well.
I guess that just follows any import-export regulations that people need to know what the laws are in trade, and usually need to hire a lawyer or a firm of lawyers that have the knowledge and expertise in it, because nobody can just read trade laws that are just in business. So you mentioned banking. How do you even get a bank account for a federally banned substance? How does that work?
Well, it's evolved over the last several years, but initially it was you had to know somebody, and there were a very limited subset of financial institutions that were willing to even try this after our FinCEN, which is Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, which is a governing body of the U.S. Department of Treasury. They oversee and manage banking institutions, whether it be credit unions, commercial banks, or banks generally. And in 2014, they came out with guidance on banking the marijuana industry, and they came up with priorities. And none of that was law. It was guidance issued by FinCEN to say, banks, if you're going to do this, notwithstanding the federal illegality of it, this is how you're going to do it. and it's a small set of rules, but rules nonetheless. And from that subset of rules, a handful, and we can count on one hand, financial institutions took advantage of that opportunity and began to develop banking programs in cannabis. So that has evolved over the years, and more banks and financial institutions are getting involved in the banking and depository services of marijuana businesses. But it's still difficult, and that applies to the hemp industry as well. And so, as things evolve and as Congress acts, and presently there is a bill in Congress that may change the rules of banking, whether it's passed this year or next. It's something that generally is believed to evolve to include marijuana banking. But as things progress, it'll get easier and easier. But for right now, there's still a waiting list at most financial institutions, and it's very difficult and challenging to get bank accounts.
And I assume you ease that process somehow, or people can, again, outsource that process, because nothing is more frustrating than trying to get appointments with banks, right?
Well, it's unfortunately not easier. In fact, it's more challenging, because the amount of extra information you have to give to a bank is tremendous, way more than your normal checking account. So really, there is no easing of that process. It's just you have to go through it, and that's just the way the industry works right now. And all signs point to it remaining a highly regulated banking industry because of what it is, at least for the near term, at least next decade, I would assume.
What are some examples of success cases that have navigated through this financial risk and then gone through or this financial struggle and then gone through and created a thriving business? Who would be in this somewhat nascent industry? Who would be a success case?
Well, I'm not going to give names of specific clients, but what I will say is there are a lot of marijuana businesses that I've represented over the years that have operated solely in cash, because every time they would put money into any bank account, no matter what it is, until they got a marijuana safe banking account, they run the risk of having their accounts closed. And I would say anybody that's been in the industry for more than 5 or 6 years has a file folder of letters from banking institutions saying we're going to close your accounts, and it extends to the ancillary business, whether you're in the marijuana industry or not. I personally had my bank account closed in 2016 to include my children's savings accounts and my wife's accounts, and none of which have anything to do with the industry. And my banks were closed because I represent companies in the industry and have nothing to do with the plan. I have nothing to do with the plan itself. So it's still a struggle, and there really is no safe way to navigate through it other than to get yourself involved with a financial institution. But to directly answer your question, is there have been a lot of businesses that have operated in cash, have paid their taxes in cash, have paid their employees in cash, rent, bills, electricity, you name it, all the way down the line in cash, which, as you can imagine, is number one, dangerous to have that much cash on your hands, to have hundreds of thousands of dollars a day in cash buried in safes. But not only dangerous, it's also logistically very difficult to keep good books and records, financial books and records, to do that. But they have, and there's a lot of companies that are still surviving today that have gone through the cash model and then worked their way into a good financial institution, and now are offering depository financial services, and that's evolving. I mean, now we have companies that are offering registered investment advice just for cannabis industry. So it's changing, and there have been a number that have done it, and there'll be a number that continue. But the hard work is rewarded for a lot of these companies that have made it this far.
You mentioned a bill in Congress that seems like it might start regulating the industry in some way. What is coming ahead in Congress? I reckon they'd love to tax this big CBD trend before it dies off, right?
Well, there's a lot. There's a lot right now in Congress, and you're right. Would they love to tax it? Absolutely. You could take CBD out of that equation and just say they would love to tax it, no matter what the product or what the substance is. Taxes are given. But right now in Congress, there's a lot that's going to happen. We're in a difficult coming up on an election year with the executive branch and the legislative branch being divided. A lot of issues are divided between the two. So it's hard to say, and it's anybody's game on what's going to change now. What I've mentioned before, what you might be referencing, would be the Safe Banking Act, and that's generally it's something that the unexpected things have happened lately. I'm not certain. It leads me to believe that Congress will allow the marijuana industry to be banked by financial institutions, but it's certainly a step in the right direction and a step towards bipartisan approach to allowing it to happen. Although right now it's just hard to predict, so I'm going to stay away from predicting what will happen, but it's going to happen in the next few years. Is what I would be willing to say.
Okay, so how does it work then to control interstate commerce when some states it's illegal, some states it's kind of legal, some states are not, and it's totally not nationally? How does that work for interstate commerce since Congress obviously constitutionally controls interstate commerce? How does that work?
Well, marijuana specifically, there is no interstate commerce, although I believe it's Oregon that has said that they would allow it to leave their borders, but other states are not allowing that to accept it. So it's almost an ineffective law at this point. But marijuana is it's not legally crossing borders between even within the same business that has multiple operations in other states. Hemp CBD, on the other hand, is regularly transported across borders and internationally across borders. Although it has been a challenge because the law enforcement isn't up to speed on this industry yet, and it's still moving so quick that it's hard for the law enforcement to keep up. But there have been instances of hemp, particularly whether it's going to be industrial fiber hemp or being extracted for CBD purposes, being mistaken as a marijuana plant and confiscated or destroyed. It's less and less as the world becomes more educated to it, but it still exists and it's still a challenge. But hemp and CBD is generally transported across state lines, and our government, the United States government, has come out with advisory opinions on allowing that to happen.
Well, certainly there are pharmaceutical legal drugs that are much worse and killing way more people. So hopefully they will figure out something soon to, small potatoes with big money, it sounds like. So I have to ask, because the rumor is people that grow marijuana products tend to think they have the greatest marijuana products in the world. Maybe I understood this from Showtime's Weeds, which maybe doesn't show me the best side of the business, but how would a venture capitalist know they're investing in the right quality of marijuana?
Well, so that's a funny and excellent question because there really isn't an answer. I'll tell you, over the years, I can't tell you how many growers I've met, whether it's in a due diligence project where we're assessing the company. But what I can tell you is that every one of the hundreds or thousands of growers across the United States and across the world, the best of them at least, every one of them believes that they grow the best marijuana. So from a venture capital standpoint and assessing the marijuana, I guess that may be part of the fun process of the due diligence from going out and just sampling it. But I think there are certain qualities of the plant that you could look for, but I wouldn't be the one to tell you what they are. We do have resources of people we call on that can go look at the plants and the quality of the plant. But generally at this point, because the market has matured enough, in Colorado at least, and many other states, there's the market is deciding what quality is, and what so looking at financial figures of the company tell you a lot. There are also contests, high times contests, or the Cannabis Cup, things like that judge the quality, and there are professionals that have, and it's such an incredible job that their job is to just test marijuana all day long, or for a period of time just to judge it. So I wouldn't be part of that process on being able to tell you what the quality is, but I can tell you that just as a heads up, for anybody that's listening to this, the grower that you're talking to is the best grower, and so is the other guy in the building next door. So keep that in mind.
Well, I'm sure no matter how far up the chain you are at a venture capitalist firm, we all have friends who would be happy to help. And it just has me thinking, Deliveroo is a food delivery company here in London, and the CEO of the company still spends a couple hours a week making deliveries by his bike to make sure everything is working properly in the system, so we can all, you have to eat your own, eat what you're cooking as well, your own business. If you don't believe in it, you probably can't enjoy the profits as much, can you? So yeah, on that note, Donnie, that's all the time we have for today. But I'm sure there are folks listening who would like to know more about the business side of cannabis, about how to invest safely and to profit dramatically from this growing trend. So how can they get in touch with you, Donnie?
Well, I love these conversations. I love to talk to people about the industry. It's something I'm really, I guess, obsessed with. I would say passionate about, but I guess it's beyond passion at this point. So happy to pick up the phone and give me a call. My office number's 303-456-5116. Happy to take emails as well. And my email is donnie@helegal.com. So DONNIE@HELEGAL.com.
And of course, that's a +1 area code, and I'm sure he'd be happy to talk. And I think we all want someone to be obsessive when they're representing our businesses, so that's good. Thank you so much, Donnie, for taking the time to talk with me today. And thank you, listeners. Thank you so much, listeners. These IR Digital Global podcasts are meant to be educational resources from experienced lawyers like Donnie, accountants, and financial advisors with extensive knowledge on topics you as professionals need to know more about. To learn more about IR Digital and its services, please visit irglobal.com. And if you found this episode useful, please consider sharing it. I'll talk to you soon.